pjnet.tv Part 2. It is 9:30 on the East Coast of the United States. Get ready to be blessed. We have our bumper running. We're recording and we are streaming this live. We have our guests ready. Our chat room is also waiting to hear from them. So let's start a countdown to Studio 9, starting now. Well, counting it down, folks. Welcome to pjnet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Prasick, and we have a first-time guest standing by in our green room. I hope you're ready to be blessed because you are going to hear the dynamic truth and Word of God spoken in a way that is both challenging and inspiring. And I can't wait to bring on board, actually, someone who I kind of grew up with. But he went one way, I went another, and here we are back together. I want to introduce you all to Carl Gallups, who is pastoring a church near the Pensacola area. It's pretty close to Pensacola, isn't it, Carl?
Yes, right
Yeah.
at Milton. It's like 10-minute drive.
Oh yeah. Been through Milton a time or two, and folks, Carl has a conflicted personality. He has a background in law enforcement. Quite a distinguished background, by the way. But the whole time, Carl, I remember when you were kind of serving as the interim youth pastor or minister, at First Baptist. But your law enforcement career didn't take you away from ministry. Tell us a little about your law enforcement career. But I'm especially interested to find out, was there a turning point that you turned a corner at some point and took that foot out of law enforcement and planted both feet in ministry?
Yeah. Well, thank you. And listen, it's an honor to be on your program with you. God bless you, man. And it's good to reconnect with you after all these years.
Been a long time.
I don't know if we'll have time tonight, but we might have to tell the story of when we did run into each other in our adult years. And it's funny now. It probably wasn't then. But anyway.
For either of us, no.
Yeah. But anyway, the bottom line is, listen, I was Florida's first 18-year-old correctional officer. The head of the HR department in the Department of Corrections, and then with the Sheriff's Office, they told me that. But anyway, I started at 18, and I served almost 11 years in law enforcement, most of that time as a patrol officer and even doing criminal investigations as well with one of the sheriff's offices. I worked for 2 different sheriff's offices under 3 different sheriffs. The last year and a half I spent at the administrative level with the Florida Department of Corrections and was the assistant administrator of the Bureau of Admission and Release Authority. We handled all 20-something thousand inmates releasing and admitting, and had, I think, 50 people working for me. But anyway, so that is quite a long and extensive career at various levels. But the bottom line is, in the midst of all of that, the ups and downs of life, married, have a kid, I'm going to school, I'm working full time. Yes, I was a Christian most of that time. There were a couple of years where I never rejected the Lord, but I just got stupid busy with life. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling the truth, and wandered away. But I came back to the Lord in a very powerful way, really made a commitment of my life serving him. But I was still in law enforcement, and that went on for years. But God just kept, and it's a long story, I'm making it short. He kept working in my life and speaking to my heart and my soul in various ways that I really needed to just use the gifts that he had given me to go full-time into ministry wherever that took me. So anyway, I know what Jonah felt like because he was serving the Lord while at the same time running from God just as far away, because I didn't want to quit law enforcement. I loved it. And I was teaching in church and helping in a big youth ministry and serving. And I kept trying to make deals with the Lord, I'll be the best deputy sheriff. I'll be the best sheriff. I'll be the best criminal investigator. I will serve you. Just please, don't make me do this. But anyway, I finally surrendered to the calling upon my life. And now I'm embarrassed that I ever fought it, because God has blessed me and changed my life and my wife and I and ministry and just been all over the world and writing books and doing media and preaching and teaching, doing big conferences able to just preach the word of God all over the world, literally. And so that's the short nutshell version of it. People ask me, how'd you go from being a cop to being a pastor? And I said, I can answer that in one word. And they say, one word? I said, yeah, God.
Yeah.
And then they want to know more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, folks, so we have a little surprise for you, a pleasant one. We post these events on Facebook, and one of our PJNet family members, Stephanie Pavlentos, noticed that Carl was our live guest tonight, and she commented and said, "Gosh, I wish I was talking to him," and because apparently Stephanie has used Carl, one of your books, in her Bible study. So I thought I would give Stephanie a chance to join us tonight, and welcome Stephanie to a screen you're familiar with. Folks, she's not in jail. She's just outside the window looking in, okay? It's the only place I could put her. But
jail. I thought that too. Jail.
So, Stephanie, you did not know Carl, but you, as we know, you're quite the Bible teacher, study guide, leader type. And how did you stumble across Carl's book, and how did you use it?
That's a really good question, because I was asked to teach a class for Basora, which I teach there probably 2 or 3 times a year. And it's a small online group. And she goes, can you teach something on the Jewishness of Jesus, and, maybe using rabbinical stuff, and, kind of get into a little bit of rabbinical writings. And so I had some rather, more academic books, but I wanted something that would be really interesting. So I went on a search, and I started reading about different books. Since I brought up the keyword was rabbi, then his book popped up. Carl's book popped up. It's called it has a very long name, so I had to actually go through and make sure I had it all right. But the Rabbi, the Secret Message, and the Identity of the Messiah.
That's
and
correct. Yeah.
I was like, oh, this book really sounds good. So I bought it for myself, and I read it. And then I told my class, I'm like, this is one of the books, but you're going to really enjoy this book. If this book over here is dry, you'll thank me when you get to this book, because it's not dry and it's very good. And they did. My students were like, yeah, I read ahead on that book, and I went right past what we're supposed to read. And most of them are all retired people, or at least, they're not like college students. And so it was a great little read for them, and it was interesting, and they learned from it. And again, I've used it even since that class. Any class that I teach, I now will show the book and say, hey, this is something I learned from Carl. And this is something I've studied, I've gone into and really been interested in for years. And he came up with just the stuff that I just really was really interested in and really wanted to dive into. So that's why I enjoyed it so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. You're so kind.
So now, Carl, just for clarification, you're not a rabbi, right?
No, I'm not a rabbi. Although that's basically is just the Hebrew word for teacher.
Teacher.
Yeah, but it carries a little bit more. The title carries a little bit more of an exalted place than that. It's a teacher of the word, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and but still, I mean, it's like calling somebody a pastor,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But yeah, so in that sense, in the Hebrew sense, I guess I would be a rabbi.
Right.
Yeah.
In
But
a
the
broad
Orthodox
sense.
Jews wouldn't consider me that, because that's
No.
their term for their exalted teachers.
Yeah, it's a title, not a description.
Yeah.
It's so Stephanie, and we don't have a whole lot of time, but you've read the book, and now you have a chance. Did you have any questions or any comments? I mean, you made a few comments, but is there anything you'd like to ask Carl?
What was the name of your co-writer again, or the Messianic Rabbi?
Yes, Messianic Rabbi Zev, Z-E-V, Porat, P-O-R-A-T, Zev Porat. Yeah.
And you met him in Israel, or did you meet him
It's a
as a
long
result of the
story.
story?
It's a miracle God story, but the short story. And if the people, your folks watching your show here, Mark, would read the book, they'll see the whole thing. But yeah, I had written some years before a book called "The Rabbi Who Found Messiah." It's the story of Israel's most exalted, venerated rabbi in its history. I mean, even all the way back to antiquity. His name's Yitzhak Kaduri. He died in 2006. But the point being that he died, he was like 108 years old. But the bottom line is the whole story, it's a true story about how he had a vision of Messiah and revealed the name of Messiah just before he died in a big service, Yom Kippur service, etc. But so anyway, in me researching all of that to write that book, and I was already with a major publisher, and they knew that I had done some research, and they said, you need to write this book. Nobody in the world has written this. So I dove into it. I wrote it. Well, I came across this Messianic rabbi, born and raised in Israel, living in Israel, ministering to his people, the Jews, a little younger than I am, and he's out there just blowing and going, and his name's Zev Porat, Messianic rabbi. And so I was watching videos on the internet where he's leading Jews to Christ, he's discipling them, and I said, man, this is amazing. Well, he was talking about Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri in one of those videos. So I included that in my book. Well, in the meantime, after the book's out, it's going crazy. Somebody in the United States, like yourself, that I had never met, read that book, but they were connected to Israel. They were going to Israel. They called me up and said, can I please get some of your books? I'm going to take them to Israel. So they did. I got a phone call while they're in Israel, said, we're looking for this Zev Porat that's in your book. And do you know where he is? I said, I don't know the man. I just know him from my research. Next thing you know, I'm getting a call from Zev Porat from Israel. And he says, man, I've read your book. He said, this is amazing. He said, were you over here? Did you know these things that you're describing? Were you in that worship service where he did that? I said, no. He says, well, I was. And he says, I'm telling you, you have nailed it. Only the Spirit of God showed you that. He says, because the way you're describing it is exactly how it happened. I cannot believe that you were not there. So we developed a friendship. Well, long story short, we are now ministry partners. We have been for 10 years. I have gone over to Israel. He's come over here. We've been all over major Christian television and radio for years. We co-authored then The Rabbi, The Secret Message, and the Identity of Messiah, because he had more to give to that story, which just blows it away, doesn't it? I mean, it does, because of him. And so I wrote that. And in the meantime, I mean, we had 2 or 3 buses that had already signed up. We were going to take a huge tour of Israel in 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. So we couldn't, and we've still never been able to do it. Yeah, but anyway, that's the short story, believe it or not. The long story is much more interesting than that.
Yeah, I think what impressed me was I mean, some of the stories he told moved me to tears, because we don't realize here the persecution that the Messianic Jews are under, and then even the Muslim people coming to Christ, and the Iman that the story. Oh my gosh, that just blew me away.
Me too. Yeah. No, and some of these people.
Because of that book, right? It was because of the book he gave them, and they questioned.
Yeah. He gave them my first book, The Rabbi That Found Messiah, and then ministered to him. And that imam, the imam of one of the largest mosques in Israel, after Zev left, talking with him, just to be able to talk to him was almost impossible. You read in the book, but he did. But after he left, it was months later. Zev just kind of forgot about him because, he went on with his life. He's got a busy life. Months later, the phone rings late one night. I'm saying this for Mark and his audience because you know this, Stephanie. You've read the book. And the guy says, hey, I'm the Muslim imam that you talked to. And he says, really? This is amazing. Why are you calling me? He says, because I've given my life to Jesus Christ. And I have renounced Islam. I have renounced my position as an imam. I'm in a different country. And he told him where, in the Middle East. And he says, I have changed my name and I'm kind of in hiding from that. but he said, I am also preaching and teaching Jesus and discipling people. And Zeb was just blown away. So all that's in the book. Again, that's the short story.
People need to read this book because it'll blow you away, the things and the prophecy over this rabbi that was told all these different years that you shared about his life, that all happened the way people saw it happening. And the fact that Yeshua came to him and revealed himself to him at one night. I mean, it's just an amazing story. We don't get enough of those kinds of supernatural stories where, Jesus just rocks himself. He just rocks the world and people in it. So
his wife was with him when he had that vision, and I know his wife intimately. They're amazing people. She hails from China. She speaks Mandarin Chinese as her first language. He speaks Hebrew as his first language. They both speak English. They're brilliant people, but they get a lot of persecution even now. But they're just really advancing the kingdom of Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ. So anyway, but thank you, Stephanie, for those kind things that you said.
Oh, it was good stuff. And I mean, my husband's not a big reader. He tells people that he has me. And so I literally will open a book, whatever book, but I would read parts to him. And I'm like, if you're not going to read this book, I'll read it to you. So I would just go through and literally read parts that struck me. And even maybe, if you don't mind, Mark, I just took over. But if you could share the part about the hand, the name, Yod He Vav He.
Did you want me to do that real quick?
Carl, we have all the time we want.
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, again, I literally can teach on that for an hour or two because we
don't have that much time.
No, of course not. but because there's a build up to it and context to it. But here's the bottom line. And some of your viewers will already know this because after discovering all of this, I mean, I'm not the discoverer of it, but after this was discovered in these latter days we're living in, Daniel's book has come, seal this vision up until the last days. That word until means in the last days, a lot of things are going to be unsealed to the world before the Lord returns. I'm convinced this is one of them because the deal is the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God. It has been pronounced in English as Jehovah from the Germanic iteration of the Hebrew, or Yahweh. A lot of people know it now. It's an ancient. It goes back to time immemorial. We don't really know when it came to be. We know in the writings of the Scripture that it is there. In most English Bibles, you will see it as capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, Lord. But that's from the Tetragrammaton. It's letting you know that that's what it is. How do you pronounce it? Well, in English, we say Lord. But it's Yahweh, what most English-speaking people know it as. Okay. But it's made up from the four Hebrew letters, Yud, He, Wah, He. And the ancient Hebrew had attached to each letter is a numerical value. That's called the Hebrew Gamatra. And Hebrew people or people that study Orthodoxy, they know this. Mm-hmm. Each letter has a numerical value to it. And there's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet, so it's not just 1 through 22. It's like 1 through 10, and then from there it goes like 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever. So they all have a number. So the ancient Hebrews were really into trying to figure out the numbers of names. Hey, you read the book of Revelation, it talks about the mark, the beast is the number of his name is 666. And that's what John's referring to. This understanding that of the Gamatra, that there's a number attached to the letters that make up this name in Hebrew. So anyway, bottom line is you got these four mysterious letters that make up this mysterious word that nobody really knows how to pronounce because Hebrew has consonants and you have to know the era of Hebrew that you're speaking to know what the vowel sounds are that go with the letters. So that's why it's still so mysterious to this day as to exactly how you would speak it. Zev speaks Hebrew as his first language, and he says this. He says, look, people pronounce it various ways. The most common way is Yahweh. but we don't know. All right, now, but we do know the numerical value. I don't have time to talk about that. But what she's talking about, what Stephanie's talking about, is the most startling of all. Not only did it have numerical values, but each letter had what's called a pictogram and an ideogram attached to it. The simplest way to explain this is even our language is beginning to use that. If you go into a restaurant, let's say, and you say, where are the restrooms? They say, right down that hall. You go down the hall and you have a stick figure of a man and a stick figure of a woman. Well, that's the pictogram. What's the ideogram? The idea behind it. Well, one has a little dress, that's the woman's room. One is just a straight stick figure, that's the man. All right, that's an ideogram and a pictogram. Well, the Hebrew letters, each one of them have those. So when we went and looked at the Hebrew ideopictograms of each of the letters, Yud, He, Wah, He. You hear He twice, and that means behold or look. Look at this. Behold. Okay. Hey, and that's funny, isn't it? Because it sounds like our English word. Hey. Yeah. But that's just a coincidence, I guess. But that's a way to remember what it means. Hey, look, behold. Okay. Yud and vav, Yud, He, Vav, or Wah, He. Yud, He, Vav, He. Let me just say what it is. If you read the pictograms, here's what the name of God says. Behold the hand, behold the nail. The most ancient name of God. You say, what's my name? My name, you want to know what I'm about? Behold the hand, behold the nail. Then you'll know who I am. That was written thousands of years before Jesus ever sat on the scene. Psalm 22, behold, this is 1,000 years before Jesus was on the cross. Behold, they have pierced my hands and my feet. They gamble for my clothing under my feet. Zechariah 12, and you will look upon me that day, whom you have pierced, and you will mourn for him as an only son. Isaiah 53, he was pierced for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. What's the name of God? Behold the hands, behold the nails. Then you'll know who I am. That's just one treasure that's unfolded in great detail in this book, and there are a lot of others like it.
Lots of treasures, yep.
That's right up your alley, isn't it, Stephanie?
It is. That's why I like the book so much, because I was just like...
Thank you. Well, and then, of course, Stephanie, in the book, I do a deep study of the term Yeshua, which just simply means salvation. So it's a common word in the Hebrew language if you're talking about anything, salvation. Right. It can be secular salvation. I was drowning and that guy pulled me out. He was my salvation. They would say he was my Yeshua. So secularly it means salvation. Or, Yasha, it comes from that, means savior. All right, well, but we pick up our English Bibles. We go into the Old Testament. Over and over and over. The book of Psalms is filled with this, but it's also in Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, where it will say things like, in the English it says, and the Lord is my salvation. Well, that says, and Yahweh is my Yeshua. In Hebrew, that's what it says. And now that we know Yahweh means behold the hands, behold the nails, Yahweh is my Yeshua. Yeshua is the Hebrew word that was given to Jesus as his name. You will call him, and in English it says Jesus, but that comes from the Latin and from the Greek into English, but from the Hebrew is, you shall call him Yeshua, because he will save his people. And so you go to the Old Testament over and over, it says, and God is Yeshua. The Lord Yahweh is your Yeshua. And then, the psalmist will write, the Lord is my Yeshua. Or God will bring his Yeshua in the last days. He will bring his Yeshua to you. I mean, that's what it says in the Hebrew. In the English, we miss that, though, because we just see the word salvation, and it doesn't even dawn on us that even in the words, there is a prophecy of God is going to put on flesh, He will provide our salvation. The one who says, behold the hands, behold the nails, becomes flesh, delivers himself to the cross, pierced in his hands and his feet with nails, and his name is salvation, Yeshua. And all through the Old Testament, it's telling us over and over and over again about it. So anyway, just stuff like that is in there, plus the story of this Messiah, not only Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat's story, but Yitzhak Kaduri, who had the vision of Yeshua, left it in a note, and it changed the world. It rocked the world. And so you have to read the book to get it all. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so interesting, because there's this really deep teaching that's in around with this story. And so you start thinking you're just going to read a story about a rabbi, an old man, finds Jesus, but no, I mean, you end up like with all this knowledge and understanding of the language and of the, like he said, the numeric, it's Hebrew is so much more complicated than we understand. It's not like our language, and it can't be taken for granted, because there's so much more depth to it all. Yeah That's the cool thing about his book, though.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. And the cool thing, the reason I love preaching and teaching the word of God, and my folks will tell you, I've been the pastor of one church for 35 years, and we have a great relationship, and we're just all over the world ministering, and they allow me. I've written 12 books, and they allow me to do that. They allow me to go. There's a couple of big Christian television shows that are now wanting me to come and host the shows for them and fill in, host, and all that. I mean, they're international shows. And so God has just opened up all those doors through that. And so one of the things that God has given me a gift of, I guess, is taking things like the old rabbi that has a vision and sees Messiah, wrapping around that story in a contextual way, all of these truths. And not only that, but then making those truths applicable to our life now. And I really love doing that. And anyway, God has blessed me. And so thank you for saying that. Zev Porat's story really brings that book alive. So, it's a good book. And I don't mean because I wrote it. I mean because of the story of it. And then Zev's story comes in on top of it. And then together, Zev and I reveal these deep mysteries that tie all to that. And then we apply it to our lives now. And people read it and they're just blown away. And I give all glory to the Lord and to Zev. and I've got a good editor, too. She makes me sound really intelligent.
That's important.
Yes, it is.
Well, Stephanie, thanks for being here. And it's an honor to, you can strike one thing off that bucket list of yours. So,
thank you, Mark. Thanks for letting me, because I was really pleasantly surprised when you said, hey, we can do this. So.
Well, Stephanie, you're part of the PJNet family, and we love you, and we appreciate all that you've brought to the programs in the months in the past and the months ahead, too. So enjoyed it, and thanks for your testimony, because I haven't read any of Carl's books, so you helped me out.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Carl. It was very nice meeting you.
God bless you, Stephanie. My honor, my pleasure. I'm humbled, and I really appreciate you being on tonight. Thank you. You've made my week. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fun, folks. I know we're running late, but you know what? No one's left. This is riveting. Carl, as you were talking about you had longer words for it, but basically the numeric symbols and all that, and I wrote down the word icon.
Yeah.
I'm a computer programmer, and there was a transition between text-based computer programming, the command line, DOS.
Right.
And when Windows came along, everything became iconized. And there are, and it's got its critics, because, it lacks the depth, but yet at the same time, everybody understands a smiley face. Doesn't matter what language you speak.
Yep.
We can express ourselves through icons and emojis and things like that. And you will see a lot of things iconized, safety symbols, on equipment, it's really kind of neat.
Just the bathrooms, a man and a woman,
Yeah.
The way our culture is going now, that's going to become difficult. But
well, I'm glad that we had some time to talk with Stephanie. But there were a couple of things on my mind that I, even though we haven't connected in a long time, I have observed from a distance. You, sir, are not afraid of the political theater.
No. Yeah.
And in many churches, that's off limits.
Yeah. And it's a shame. And c- can I address that real quickly, or were you going to
I,
say
I,
something?
I teed it up for you. Hit it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Then let me get my driver and take it down the fairway. No, listen. Here's what I say, and I am not disparaging anybody. I'm not talking down to anybody. Please hear me. This is my heart. I've been doing this a long time now. But a lot of pastors, and some do it nefariously, but some do it just because they don't understand what I'm getting ready to say. So I'm going to say this so that I can help people, pastors and Christians. Over the years, um, are we still live?
Yes, I was just doing some stuff. Go ahead.
Okay,
I
that's
didn't know
okay. I
that would.
just heard some stuff in the background and
Everything's fine.
thought
Yeah.
I was gone. But anyway, over the years, uh, Satan has played a trick on Christians and the church in several ways. We would speak to something. It got to where we started speaking to issues, and we were told, preacher, you need to stay out of politics. And then they started saying, 501c3, you can lose your 501c3. Well, the problem with that is, I'm sorry, I'm getting tons of feedback. Is everything okay?
Stephanie, what I'm going to do just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and dismiss you from the green room, and maybe that'll kind of let some stuff release some resources. There we go. She left by herself. Anyway,
Okay, well, thank you.
I hope everything. Yeah, there's a mute button on your
Yeah, I
screen,
think
but
it
you
is.
didn't know that. So let's try to do
Well,
it.
I think it's better right now. It was disturbing my thought process. I'm sorry, because I kept hearing about three different things coming out of my.
I'm easily confused too, Carl. It's okay.
Yeah. I am. I surely am. But anyway, you've caught me. You've busted me, brother. All right. But the bottom line is that one of the tricks that Satan has pulled is he's taken biblical issues, the definition of marriage, the definition of gender, the sanctity of the womb, and he's made these into political issues. I mean, the politicians, it's a political, medical, scientific issue about genders now. It's a political, medical, social, scientific issue about abortion in the womb and the baby. It's a political issue and a social issue about marriage, and you can marry who you love, and and all. So when we try to speak to it, you need to stay out of politics now. Those are political issues. See, no, those are biblical issues. And they were biblical issues. They're spiritual issues long before they were co-opted by the politicians and Satan himself. And so a lot of pulpits have been shut down. They don't speak to those issues. Now, I don't think we should be jerks about speaking. We shouldn't be trashing people and calling them names and hoping they all go to hell. And I mean, I've heard all of that, and that's horrible. And that does not hit the heart of God or either. But we should not back up from boldly and lovingly proclaiming the sin of these things that break God's heart, but yet still be able to minister to those who've been caught up in this and to love them and to reach out to them. Abortion's not the unforgivable sin, but we know that it destroys life literally, and the woman who's had the abortion and the guy, if he's got any heart at all, they're basically damaged goods for the rest of their lives. I know this because I minister to people who, when they were teenagers, had abortions, and now they're middle-aged people and they're still grieving and trying to get rid of it out of their head. And so this is how Satan works. Same thing with people changing their genders, and people that do that, they have a 5 times higher suicide rate than any other group on the planet. And so there always is a price attached to stepping outside of God's word. Okay, so I tell pastors and Christians, look, first of all, it's not a political issue. Do not let Satan fool you. Do not let government officials fool you. These are biblical issues. Not only do you have a right to speak to them, you have a responsibility. Then I want to address 501c3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Because there's so much misunderstanding about that. And again, I'm not disparaging. I'm going to set it straight. Some people just repeat what they see on the internet somewhere, and they think it's the truth, and it's not. 501c3. I could talk for a long time. I'm going to give the short thing here. But it goes back to when Lyndon Johnson was running for president.
Johnson Amendment.
Basically what happened, this is a short story and I'm dumbing it down for myself, but it basically, he had a lot of churches that were against him and some of his very liberal policies. And so they were basically campaigning. Churches actually became political action committees. They were taking up offerings. They were giving it to his opponents. And he almost lost the election. And he was pretty mad after he went in at the churches. And so the Johnson Amendment and so, but he didn't just summarily put that out there. It had to go through Congress and all of that. So people tweaked it. But the bottom line was that churches, tax-free churches, could not use their tax-free status to raise, I don't know, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, wink, wink, tax-free, put it in the offering plate, and you can actually get a tax write-off for supporting the candidate we choose. And so listen, I agree with that concept. I don't think that's right for churches to be playing the system and using this great blessing that we have of having tax-free status. Because see, the thing in the United States, the First Amendment says the government can't get involved, not supposed to, and telling a church it can or cannot exist, etc. Well, the deal is, if you can tax a church, you can also close its doors. If you finagle it around, you can tax it out of business. So our founding fathers understood that. And so that's why the First Amendment, and then eventually we had to deal with this 501c3. They said, okay, you can be tax exempt, but you cannot misuse that and turn it into a political action committee. So for example, if you were running for president under 501c3, I'm going to tell you the only thing that it prohibits you from doing, and then I prove it by my life. 35 years I opened Donald Trump's first Florida rally for president in 2016 in January in Pensacola, Florida. That was his first rally in Florida, a major swing state. And his campaign folks asked me to open it for him. And I did, as a pastor, a longtime pastor on the Gulf Coast. 501c3. Well, how can you do that? You should have lost your tax exempt status. No, the law doesn't prohibit me from doing that. I put signs in my yard. I donated money to the campaign. Nothing prohibits me. Here's what it prohibits. And I urge people, go read the 501c3 laws. It's only about 5 paragraphs. It's simple to understand. And bottom line, the synopsis is this. So you're running for president. 501c3 prohibits me from having only you come to my pulpit on a Sunday morning, for example, an official meeting of the church. I put you in the pulpit so you can give a campaign speech to a captive audience. Then I turn around and take up a collection, wink, wink, and tell everybody this is all going to go to Mark Prasick, who's running for president. And it's tax-free, so give a lot. Okay, 501c3 says you can't do that. That's right. It's not right to do.
And it wouldn't be.
No, it wouldn't be. And I tell people, I like that law. Some people get mad at me and say, well, I don't. I say, well, I don't know. We just disagree on that. I don't think it's right. In all my 35 years, we've been very political, but I've never done anything like that, and I wouldn't do it. Even if the law permitted me, I would not do
there
that.
You go.
It's not, Sunday morning worship service is not about campaigning and taking up wink, wink collections for politicians. It's about exalting Jesus Christ, preaching and teaching the word, and worshiping the Lord. All right? So, but 501c3 says you can't turn your church into a political action committee. It also says, though, watch this. If you were running for president and John Doe and Joe Blow were running for president, if I issued an invitation for all three of you to come to my worship service and each give a little speech, I can do that. You can do that, even if you're 501c3. It doesn't say you can't be political. It says you cannot misuse your church and its tax exempt status to take and support one man or woman and give money to them at a tax-free status.
That's essentially money laundering. Essentially.
Yes, exactly. We've had campaign rallies in our church, not on a Sunday morning, but we would advertise that, listen, tonight For example, in our local area, the sheriff's race got real heated one year. There were like 10 people running. And I said, I'm going to create a symposium for them to talk, invite friends from the community. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that came and packed that place out because everybody wanted to know. Our church was basically used like an auditorium, and we did it. And I didn't endorse a singular candidate. No one was allowed to do that. They were just allowed to give their speeches and answer questions from the audience. Totally legal. I'll tell you something else that's legal. You even a 501c3 can give money to an issue. I'll show you how we did it here. When I came here 35 years ago, our county was dry. Me being a law enforcement officer for years before that, working in wet counties and seeing all that goes with the flow of liquor and then prostitution and homelessness and rehab centers, all of that. For years, I helped in keeping our county dry, but our county kept growing and growing and growing, and people from all over the United States were moving into our area because it's so beautiful down here. We're right on the beaches, and I knew it was going to slip away from us. And but in the last couple of 2 or 3 campaigns, they would come around every 2 or 4 years. Our church, it was written up in the newspapers by the liberal media that hated me for doing it, but there's nothing illegal. But they were writing up that our church was the largest single contributor to the anti-liquor movement. And I'm not opposed to somebody having a drink if they want to. I'm not that guy, but I was opposed to turning our beautiful area into this cesspool, which it is now. We've got homelessness through the roof. We've got addiction through the roof. Our people dying from drunk drivers has gone through the roof. I mean, everything that you can imagine has happened. But anyway, so we gave, I don't remember how many tens of thousands of dollars to those causes for years, and the media kept trashing us, and they kept saying, he's 501c3. But what they didn't know is it's not illegal. And I'm standing here as proof. Listen, I've been on major Christian television shows. I was on Skywatch. I was on the Jim Baker Show and several big Christian shows that reach the whole world. I mean, literally have a worldwide audience during the 2016 election between Hillary and Trump. And they invited me to encourage Christians to get out and vote. And if they were so inclined to vote for Trump over Hillary because she was so liberal, Trump was, rah, rah, America. And those were the only choices we had at that point. And so whether you like, now I happen to like Donald Trump a lot. Some people didn't, but they liked him better than Hillary. So I got on those shows. I went before the world as a pastor and supported Trump and encouraged people to vote for Trump, and Trump won. And I know Jim Baker and those guys at Skywatch, they got a call from Donald Trump after he won and told them that if it wasn't for those shows, he didn't think he would win. He would have won. So people will say, well, look, then you, Carl Gallups, you were a part of that, and we're going to get you on a 501c3. I'm sorry, it can't be done. It was not illegal. I did not represent my church. I did not say our church is endorsing Donald Trump. That would have been illegal. What I said was, I am a pastor of a church. All right, big deal. I'm a pastor of a church, but I, Carl Gallups, even as a pastor, I am endorsing Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, and I'm encouraging you to pray about it, think about it, and please vote for that way. I did it over national and international television. No one from the IRS or anybody even said a bleep to me because I was perfectly legal. So all of these things have been worked out in court ever since 501c3 came into action, just like giving to the wet-dry issue. The rule that the courts have settled on is, as long as a church does not give to a political issue more than 10% of its total budget for that year. Because again, what they're afraid of is that somebody will start a church, but then really it will become an issue campaign, political action committee. I'm turning my phone off here. I should have done that before we got started. So they're saying, okay, you can't just start something and call it a church and get a tax exempt status, So they said, look, but if you're a real church and you're 501c3, you can give up to 10% of whatever your budget is. Well, our budget's pretty large, so that was a large amount of money, and we gave it to that issue for several years. So I'm just telling your folks, please, before you trash 501c3, if you and your church doesn't want to do it, that's fine. That's up to you, and I don't judge you. We do it because people are much more apt to give and support the ministries and stuff if you are. I agree with the critics of that, though. Some people say, well, they shouldn't just give because it's a tax deduction. I know that, but if you're making it easier for people to give, and
enabling them to give more.
Yeah, and it's legal. It's legal. Now, so you can speak to issues. You can have rallies, even in your church. I would never do it on a Sunday morning, but it's perfectly lawful, provided you invite. Now, let's say you and John Doe and Joe Blow were running for sheriff, the three of you, or president, and I invited all three, and only you showed up. The other said, I'm not going down to that church. Well, then you get to speak, as long as I can prove and show on the paperwork that I invited them all. But I cannot get up in the pulpit and say, now, folks, I'm endorsing him. This church needs to endorse him. You need to endorse him. He's got campaign signs out in the foyer. Pick them up, put them in your yard, and put some money in the offering plate. We're going to give it to Mr. Prasik running for president. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So I hope that helps people. And listen, I've had this tested by lawyers. I've gone over this. I'm not a lawyer, but I did sleep in a Holiday Inn last night. So, but I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not trying to pretend like I am. But I'm a 35-year pastor who has opened the campaign rally for one of the most popular presidents in history on international television. So I know what I'm talking about. So people that might be screaming at your show right now saying I'm a liar, I am not. It's just that I know the law. And you're right, I do get involved. I do get involved on the abortion issue, on the marriage issue, on the gender issue, on the political issue, everything that's happening. And by the way, most of the Old Testament prophets, go read Isaiah again. Read the life of Isaiah. Read the life of Ezekiel. Read the life of Jeremiah. Those guys, they got right in the mix. They went right up to the kings. Look at John the Baptist. He got his head cut off for going to the king and addressing him. Jesus was attacked by all of the government officials and was crucified. Paul, who said we must obey the government, people misquote that, Romans 13 all the time, and they try to say, see, you just got to bow down to the government. No, you don't. Paul got his head cut off because they were telling him to quit preaching, and he wouldn't quit preaching. Well, was he disobeying the government? No, what that passage means is, as much as it is possible with us, live in peace. The church does not exist to overthrow governments. Carl Gallups, as a pastor, does not exist to go inflict punishment upon politicians that I don't like. But what we exist to do is we're supposed to, day by day by day, keep the law, live as a good citizen. But when the government steps in and starts saying, you cannot go to church, you must shut your churches down, or you cannot sing if you go back to church because we got this virus thing going on. You can't sing. Now, you can go to a casino and scream and shout and gamble all night long, but you can't sing in church because you're going to kill people. You can't say Jesus in the public square. You can't talk about the Word of God. I mean, then it's up to you and the Lord, but those laws don't apply. I mean,
well, there's numerous biblical examples, and to isolate Romans 13:1 as proof text is falling short of the standard of judicious thought. Daniel, did he just obey the authorities? How about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego?
No,
did they do that? Right, in the face of certain death.
Yeah, John and Peter were called in before the Sanhedrin, and they said, shut up, speaking in this name of Jesus. And they said, well, you make your mind up, do what you want, but we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, we can't help it.
They broke the law.
I had another topic I wanted to talk about, but you kind of already did it, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything that you might not have said earlier. You have not shied away from the spotlight of the media, and very few people penetrate that. Some are actually afraid to, I think.
Yeah. I all of that, see, everything that's happened in my life since I surrendered to the ministry, I mean, I've been a radio talk show host for 20 years. I've been on 4 or 5 major radio stations. Now I wrote these books. I never wanted to write a book. Now I've written 12. Those have put me from East Coast to West Coast, all over television, all over radio. I do 4 or 5 radio interviews a week from this studio at my home office. And then I get on airplanes about every 3 weeks and fly all over and do TV shows. But all of these things, Mark, I never asked for any of them. I never even sought them. It's a long story, and we don't have time to go into it, but I was speaking at an event. A guy that owned a radio station heard me for the first time, didn't know me. He put me on the radio, said, "You need a radio program." And I started off humbly 20-something years ago. That kept growing and growing. The internet came about, live streaming came about. Eventually, I was syndicated basically because of that all over the world. Next thing you know, I've got, I wrote a book just for my church. I was going to self-publish it. There's a long story how it fell into the hands of a major publisher. I did not give it to him. I gave it to a friend who was connected to them, and I didn't even know. I had no idea. I'd met him in the media, in the radio industry. They called up, wanted to publish my first book. It went crazy on Amazon. It was a bestseller and like in the top 200 of all 17 million books that are on Amazon. That put me on TV. Then one TV led to another TV, another TV. That put me in the sight of Donald Trump when he was running for president. He comes to Florida. He comes to this area. Who does he want to open his rally but a pastor that's known all over the world? So I do it. And I mean, so all of these things, I didn't call them up, say, "Hey, let me open your rally," or "Hey, publish my book," or "Hey, put me on your TV show." I mean, I didn't call you and ask you. You found out about me and you called me, and I'm very grateful. And so here I am. And so everything in my life has been God opening the doors and me walking through them. So no, I don't shy away from it. And I think all of those years in law enforcement has helped me tremendously in my life, because I'm not Billy Bad Boy. I'm not saying I'm never afraid of anything. But listen, I was in 4 different gun battles. I was shot at 4 different times, commendations of valor and commendations of meritorious service and stuff. And so God was just developing me as a young man to not be afraid and to deal with tough things and stand up to it. And now in the ministry, I've had to do that over and over and over again. And it's not that I'm never afraid. I am sometimes. It's not that I'm never concerned or worried. I am sometimes. But I've learned just to do what God says, and He'll take care of the rest. And it started with me being a cop. I'm convinced that God was using that to train me up.
Amazing. Carl, we'll have some more talk January 15th, and we'd love to have you anytime. And if you know of anybody in your congregation that has a story to tell, you know what? We want to hear their story too.
Thank you,
and
Mark.
that's what we do. It's just it's very seldom. By the way, we've had Governor Abbott on our program.
That's so cool. That's great.
Yeah.
He's a good governor.
And,
Boy, I love our
and a
governor
few.
in Florida.
Yeah, and you know, but it's just really good to connect with you again, Carl. You're still the same person. I can remember you were strong-willed as a teenager. I remember when you were working out and had hair down at Rambo, you know, and
that was the style back then. That was the style. Yeah.
Oh, I remember the days. But Carl, thank you so much for sharing. I'm glad we had you come on at 9:30 so we could take some extra time. And you know, people are probably headed for bed about now, but thank you for sharing, and I hope that your message and your ministry are I hope the Lord increases your territory exponentially as He has been doing.
He has been, and all glory goes to Him for everything in my life and ministry. And thank you. And for us to hook back up is just great for me, just because you were my friend back then, and now we get to reconnect. And thank you.
Yeah, good to be in communication with your wife Pam too. So, all right. Well, Carl, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again, and hopefully again and again and again. And thank you for sharing tonight. We appreciate it. You
call me anytime, and I would be glad to come back on with you, Mark. God bless.
Carl, that means a lot to me, man. I appreciate it, bud.
Thanks.
All right, man. Well, folks, I know that was long. I admit it, but you know what? Everybody in the chat room has been riveted. The comments are just flying up and down the chat room. What a night it has been, and we'll be back again tomorrow night. Carl will be one of our speakers at the PJNet God and Country event, January 15th, near Tallahassee, Florida. If you go to our website, you won't see anything there about it. Really, you won't. We do not have any means of doing business monetarily on our website, but we hope that you will hook up with some of those that are involved, myself included. And if you want to know more about it, we can get you to the information about that event, because we'd like you to be there. We've got Carl there. Well, yeah, it's going to be good, folks. It's going to be good. Before I leave, if you haven't been challenged tonight, which I know you have, I want to give you another challenge to be thinking about 2 questions. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? You've just heard some testimony of courage in the face of opposition, let's just call it. And how long ago was it when you did that bold thing for Jesus Christ? Well, that's good, but we need to do it again and again and again. So I hope that we will not be satisfied with our answers to either of those 2 questions.